Hello again and welcome back to this replay analysis series I'm trying to create on this channel. It's where I try and break down the decision making of both the player and the friendlies and sometimes the enemy to show how they either come up with a spectacular result or highlight the mistakes that they make and show how that leads to a defeat. So this time we've got Torque playing the 45 TP, the Polish Tier 7 heavy tank, and they are going to show us exactly how to earn a Spartan medal in this game. So Torque taking their initial position here on the Ents map, dashing it from the southern spawn all the way to this wrecked building, and as you can see, a lot of enemies are going to be turning up here very rapidly. It's an extremely aggressive position they've taken here, and they do get an early shot off as the 40 TP and they bounce in return, so that's good trade, but the KV-85 slams a huge shell into the back, and Torque thinks about pursuing the 40 TP around the corner but sees the enemies on the end of the road. A little bit of a change in perspective here just so I can illustrate the point a little bit better. Torque's position is very aggressive, but it is also very vulnerable. So Torque has managed to get themselves onto this corner of the wrecked building here. The point I want to really drive home here is this aggressive play has resulted in Torque not really having any options. Where they're sat now, that heavy tank number 6 can just pressure them out of the position, or they just fight the 1v1. They can't push because along that street there's the SU-100M1 as well as some backup further down the street, and they can't go backwards because the KV-85 will just shoot them in the side again. So Torque has to spend hit points to get out of this position in order to stay alive, essentially, because they can't beat a heavy tank number 6 that's backed up while not being able to maneuver at all and angle their armor at all, because any movement they make will force them to be exposed to another line of fire that the enemy has. And you can see now this situation is going to come to fruition. Torque gets a couple of lucky bounces off the front, but as you see, they back up too far and the KV-85 just slams another shell into the back of them. They turn their turret to try and deal with the KV-85, and now they're exposed to the heavy tank number 6, and they drive forward enough to stop the SU-100 from getting them, but the heavy tank number 6 has a fast enough gun that they manage to plant another shell into the 45 TP's back. So you see, Torque has lost almost all of their health, but had to pay that health to get out of that situation. If they had stayed there, they would have definitely died, but they had to use that hit point pool that they had left to move into a safer spot that they find themselves in now. Now, if you find yourself in the situation that Torque was just in, that you have to pay the hit points to get out of there essentially and reduce the amount of fire coming in, it pays to know the alpha damage of the enemy tanks. At the end of that little sequence there, Torque took the hit from the heavy tank number 6 to escape the shot from the SU-100M1. Now, the SU-100M1 has a large enough gun to one-shot the 45 TP's remaining health in that situation, but the heavy tank number 6 would need a really, really high roll in order to do so. So we'll give Torque the benefit of the doubt and say they deliberately drove in front of the heavy tank number 6, knowing full well they'd take the hit because they do take the damage, but at least they'd survive. And meanwhile, that wouldn't happen against the SU-100M1. So knowing the alpha damage of enemy tanks, say if you had 600 health left and you knew the enemy did 500 damage and you needed to get out of there, you might seriously need to consider taking that hit, because once they've shot, they'll be reloading and you have all that time to repair your tracks if they track you, or just get further away or get unspotted even. Regardless, back to the gameplay here. Torque obviously no longer in a position to trade or be aggressive, so they just have to hang back in this position. They do pick up the kill on that T-37 that tried to kill them, but slammed a shell into the wrecked building just there in front of them. But the big problem that Torque and their team have left now is this Black Prince. This full health Tier 7 British heavy tank is going to be a serious problem for the rest of the team, because the Black Prince isn't very good when it's mid or bottom tier, but when it's top tier, it's a serious force to be reckoned with. And paired up with that enemy Panther, it could win them the game single-handedly. With that much health left, it can do what Torque can't and trade all day. Even though this gameplay is focused around Torque's perspective, This Black Prince is going to show us exactly how not to deal with a situation that it finds itself in, or soon to find itself in. The key point here is the Black Prince is going to be engaged from multiple directions, one of which is obviously Torque and the VK3001P. Now, the Black Prince will soon have to make a decision on which fight to take, which is the one that they think they can win. So, if you try and imagine the gameplay from the Black Prince's perspective, they do have a fairly tough decision to make. Do they go for the one-shot 45 TP and the tier 6 heavy, or do they turn around and deal with the Panther and the IKV-90B who are flanking them? The point I'm trying to make here is these decisions really matter, and I believe that this decision lost the Black Prince this game. Okay, so let's try and break this decision down and see why it was so detrimental. But first, let's talk about why the Black Prince took that decision in the first place. If this was the first time you'd seen the minimap in the entire game and just saw it as it was, and I said to you, right, you're driving the Black Prince, you can either go for the VK3001P and the 45 TP or the Panther and the IKV-90B, which would you choose? You would probably say the 45 TP and the 3001P, purely because firstly they are a tier 7 and a tier 6, and you are instead fighting them instead of two tier 7s, so that's by and large an easier fight. Also, if you take a look at the positions of the rest of the enemy tanks, you can see that it would be much easier for them to converge on Torque's position and the VK3001P's position than it would be to sort of bend over backwards and try and deal with the Panther and the IKV. On top of that, the Panther and the IKV-90B both have guns that don't do much damage but have very good penetration statistics, something that is not shared very much by the 45 TP and the 3001P. So both the Panther and the IKV will have a much better chance of damaging your tank, the Black Prince in this case, than the other pair. So it would be beneficial for you to play to the tank's strengths of its really strong armor and deal with people who will find it harder to get through your armor. On top of that, if I revealed to you that the 45 TP was an easy one-shot and all the other tanks on the enemy team were at least half hit points, it's going to be a fairly easy decision for you to make. You want to deal with the one-shot enemy tank, so you can go and fight a 1v1 against a tier 6 heavy, which, with all due respect, doesn't stand a chance against the Black Prince unless it fires premium from a secluded position with backup. So if we take this sort of bare bones perspective that I've laid out, then the decision is pretty obvious which way to go. Just drive at the low health thing, kill the thing, rinse and repeat. But that's not the purpose of this video series. It's to try and show the best decision you could make and then see if there are any clues in the game to figure out how to come to that decision. And I think the Black Prince could have correctly gone for the Panther and the IKV for two reasons. The first clue that I think the Black Prince should have been made aware of was the balance of hit points. They're on mostly full health, but the rest of their teammates have barely any left. They're all pretty much one-shots with the exception of a couple. So while they are in a decent position to enclose on the 45 TB and the VK3001P, they are at serious risk of dying to artillery, the Panther and the IKV in one shot. So while on initial inspection it looks like the enemy tanks are surrounding the 45 TP and the VK3001P, the actual situation is they've been driven into a corner by the Panther and the IKV and the artillery, and they can't really relocate because they have such little health. They were in the situation that Torque was near the start of the game. They can't make plays, pushes or anything like that because they don't have the hit points left. For the second reason, I'll keep it a little bit simple and just say when I unpause this video, the 45 TP and the 3001P would not be able to do what this Panther is going to do to the back of this Black Prince for multiple reasons. Firstly, they're not quick enough, they're too far away, and if they were to push into the back of that Black Prince, there's a significant chance they're going to get taken out on the way there, whereas the Panther is safe to do so from behind the trains. So, as I've laid out, this Black Prince is just going to tunnel vision on Torque's tank and just try and take them out. And you can see just behind them, from Torque's perspective, the Panther has lined up and is starting to unload into the back of this Black Prince. I'm surprised it didn't get set on fire in this whole exchange, because the Panther put a lot of shots in. I honestly can't tell if the engine's been damaged, because the Black Prince is slow anyway. But you can see that all of the health of that Black Prince is gone by the time it gets to the end of the street, and Torque even has the balls to just come out and plant a shot into the front of him side on, and then the VK of all people finishes them off. Now it's pretty much just a case of cleanup. The Super Hellcat and the M2Y are still pretty formidable machines, but the Panther's pressuring them to relocate, and unfortunately with the binoculars, Torque was able to catch out that Super Hellcat. Now finally is able to leave their position from the graveyard that they have now created in the center left side of the map. So Torque and the remaining allies now pushing towards the last fighting vehicle on the enemy team, taking out the artillery quite promptly. Torque wanted a ambush shot there on the M2Y, but it didn't happen. But then they just drive out on the other side of the building and get absolutely destroyed for it. And with that, Torque manages to take down a pretty impressive game and an interesting victory. So in summary then, Torque took a really aggressive play at the start, and it's very difficult to make those plays pay off, especially in a heavy tank. You really need the armor and you really need the firepower to stave off the enemies, and you do need the hit points to pay for mistakes if you make any. So just be aware of that, especially at the start of the game. Those kind of plays can cost you a lot of health. You need to be sure that that position is worth it. Then later on we saw what happens if you make probably the wrong decision, but commendations to the Panther for spotting the opportunity and reacting so quickly to get nigh on 800 damage surely into that back of that Black Prince. So both look for those opportunities to take on enemies that are tunnel visioning on one of your allies, and simultaneously don't do what the Black Prince did. That's about it for this video. I hope you really enjoyed it. If you liked it, please consider giving it a like, and if you are interested in more content like this, consider subscribing. It's what I'm trying to do, so that's the kind of pattern I want to follow. I'm trying to refine this series of videos to try and get the right balance of sort of editing and not just pausing the video and talking for ages over that kind of thing. So if you have any suggestions about streamlining it or making it better or adding in features that I don't have, then please whack it in the comments down below. I'll have a read and see if I can implement it for the next one. But in the meantime, thank you for joining me. I'll see you in the next one.